everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS value picks for this week's US Open. In this video, we'll be going over my top 6 GPP plays priced $8,000 and below for Draftkings contest to help you save some salary and give you a little bit more flexibility to spend up for an extra stud or two. With how top heavy these major championships get, you're going to want to fit in 2, maybe even 3 of those guys from $9,000 plus, and to do so, you're going to have to do a little bit of dumpster diving. So going to give you some of those high 7K options, some of the middle 7K options, and even a 6K option or two to help you round out your lineup. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop right on into it. Alrighty, the first value pick we've got is Tommy Fleetwood, one of my favorite options towards the top of the 7K range, and somebody who's had plenty of success at the comp courses I'm looking at, most notably Shinnecock Hills, where Tommy Fleetwood finished in second to Brooks Koepka. He's known as a well-rounded player, and of late he has flashed that skill set. So if we take a look at his last 24 measured rounds, you'll get an idea of exactly what I'm talking about, where he's gaining across the board. Off the tee, on approach and putting would have to be his best assets, but always going to be one of the better short game players too. What really excites me about Tommy Fleetwood is what we saw at the PGA Championship. So if we take a look at his recent form, you can see at the PGA had the top 5 finish, solid finish at the RBC Heritage, both golf courses that I'm using as comps this week. You can see it wasn't quite his best finish at the Charles Schwab, another comp course that I am looking at, but at the very least was able to make the cut there. The more important comp for me is that Shinnecock Hills US Open. Of course, the winning score there was over par, and this golf course is going to be similarly difficult. Now, it might not be quite as windy as what we saw at Shinnecock, which is what made that golf course even more difficult than what I'd expect to see at Brookline. It's a positional, long rough golf course, tiny greens with quite a bit of undulation on them too, which is just a huge parallel between the courses there. And in general, he's coming in with form. He's more than fairly priced at $7,700. I think it's the time to jump on the Tommy bandwagon. So not somebody I'm going to bet outright. I just think that he has top 10, maybe top 5 upside. For him to actually win this major championship might be a little bit too far-fetched. So in large field GPPs, the beauty is he doesn't have to win to be an optimal play. So going to be the best format, at least in my opinion, this week to go out and get that exposure. Next up, we have Sungjae Im, who's going to be an incredibly chalky pick this week because it makes perfect sense. At $7,600, he's the one name who really stands out among the rest, and for good reason. He's got a great skill set for this golf course. So we take a look at his recent form because he's gaining in every category but the putter. And one thing for Sungjae Im we'd expect to be a consistent gainer would be with the flat stick. He's usually a well above average putter, and of late that's the one thing holding him back. So I do have a little bit of optimism that that's going to turn around, particularly on Poa Anua, which tends to be one of his favorite surfaces, not his favorite out of all 4, but up there in the top 2 at the very least. So he gains right about 0.4 shots more per round on Poa than he does any other surface. So given the ball striking's been there, again, gaining significantly in all the ball striking categories around the green, he's been more than serviceable of late. Potentially could ride this momentum that he started to generate into the major championship because it was a top 10 at the Memorial, a top 15 at the Charles Schwab. Of course, had to take some time off, including the PGA Championship, due to having COVID, but has come back with a vengeance. And, top 15, top 10, maybe he finishes in the top 5 this week. It would be more than enough to pay off the price tag at $7,600. So I like the skill set fit too. He's a very positional, smart player. This is a thinking man's golf course. His strategic, more of a conservative approach, I'd expect to pay huge dividends at this venue. Next up, we have Webb Simpson, a winner of the US Open. So not really a surprise I'm going to him here. He's at $7,400, and really it's been the putter for Webb holding him back too. So that's going to be a little bit of a recurring theme throughout the player pool here. So you can see whereas Webb Simpson at $7,400 is gaining in every category but with the putter. So kind of similar to a Sungjae Im, and while it's not been as significant of gains with the tee to green play, he's been decent with the recent form. So if we take a look at his finishes, it's been a bunch of made cuts, the only missed cut being at the Wells Fargo Championship, and while he hasn't had any flashy performances, he was in contention at the PGA for quite some time. Even at the RBC Heritage, early on in the tournament, he found himself in contention, just hasn't held it together for all 4 rounds. The huge X factor here is his POA putting. The guy on POA just makes anything and everything, one of the best putters in the world. In fact, over a stroke better per round on POA than he is on any other surface. So if we're going to see him bounce back at any point, this is where you're going to see the putter bounce back. And the tee to green play hasn't been horrible of late. In fact, I would argue that we should see some improvement from him in all 3 of those categories. In general, I think he's going to be a relatively low-owned play. So as compared to somebody like a Sanjay M, who might actually get close to 20% owned this week, you're going to be looking at like 10, maybe 12% ownership at a max on somebody like a Webb Simpson. So if you're looking for a leverage play, somebody who's a little bit cheaper, might be worth making that pivot. Next up, we're going to go to Gary Woodland. He's here at $7,100. And for quite some time, we've been talking up Gary Woodland because the ball striking is starting to look like the Gary Woodland of past. The Gary Woodland who's won major championships. He's come out on these type of venues and had plenty of success. So you can see the reason for the optimism is gaining a ton of strokes both off the tee and on approach. And while he's not the best around the green player in the world, this is a golf course where you don't really be relying on the around the green play to begin with. This is a golf course you want to just bore it to death with hitting fairways all day, hitting a bunch of greens of regulation, and 2-putting, right? Taking the off chance at birdie that comes up from time to time. And that's exactly what Gary Woodland did in his major championship victory. So if we take a look at the recent form, it's been a little bit volatile. He's been a little bit all over the place, a few missed cuts there of late. In fact, 3 out of his last 4 starts. The PGA Championship at least made the cut at Southern Hills. That was great to see. But despite all of this volatility, the ball striking has remained, and anytime I see that with a player, obviously the putter, recurring theme once again, he's also losing to the field. If there's going to be a surface where we see him turning around, it's on POA. Over almost half a stroke better per round on POA than any other surface. So really like him there at $7,100, and I think we're going to see the bounce back with the putter this week, which for so long for Gary Woodland, early parts of 2022, the fall swing of the season, he was making anything and everything. If he gets back to that and continues to hit the ball like he has, watch out. It's going to be a top 10, top 15 for Gary Woodland. Next up, we've got Siwoo Kim at $7,000. And Siwoo Kim has been slowly but surely chugging along. Very consistent player, which obviously is a little bit of an oxymoron. He's one of the more volatile players that we have on tour. But of late, has been playing consistent golf. And that's why the shots gained metrics look as solid as they do. In fact, close to a neutral or at least a gainer in all 4 categories. Off the tee, he's not the longest player, so has to do it a little bit more with his accuracy than anything, which I'm okay with, right? It's not ideal. This is a course where you want to gain off the tee, but you're talking about guys in the 7K range at this point. They're not going to have a perfect skill set. Significant gainer on approach over a quarter of a stroke per round around the green has been really solid for Siwoo Kim. And much like pretty much every other pick on this list, is better on POA than he is any other surface. So much better than his 50-round baseline there. The results, like I said, have been very consistent. Pretty much grinding out cuts week in and week out. You can see made cut there. The only missed cut on his track record of late was at the Byron Nelson in Birdie Fest, where the cut was, I believe, 5 or even 6 under par if memory serves me right. So under difficult conditions, you've seen him thrive. Top 15 at the Memorial, just grinding out made cuts at these positional golf courses. So if you're looking for a consistent play, he's one of the value picks this week that has a high floor. He's shown that of late, but we know Siwoo Kim is a madman. We know that this guy, when he gets it running, there is no hotter or no player that can get more scorching than a Siwoo Kim. So the upside is certainly still there. It's somebody that I'm worth, at least I think, is worth taking a few shots on at his price tag. And now lastly, the last value I want to talk about is going to be Joel Dahmen at $6,600. And he's a volatile player, kind of similar to a Siwoo Kim, another guy who's better on POA than he is any other surface. But more importantly, he is gaining off the tee and he is gaining on approach. He's one of the few players in this range that can say that. You can see Grayson Murray is just a marginal gainer in both categories. Go up a little bit further, Stuart Sink, a marginal gainer in both categories. Kurt Kitayama, obviously Danny Lee. There's not many outside of the 4 or 5 names that are up here. And the cheapest of all of them is Joel Dahmen. And arguably the highest upside of all of them is Joel Dahmen, because we've seen him in major championships have ceiling performances. Just think of the Masters. He was out there in the first round leader for quite some time. He's had success at the PGA Championship. You don't think of him as a major championship killer, but with his volatility, how aggressive he plays, when he's firing in all cylinders, kind of similar to a Siwoo Kim, he can get himself into contention. And while his floor at this point is lower than a Siwoo Kim has been much more consistent this year. It's really, taking him to another level. He's starting to put up points every single week. And when he has those ceilings, Siwoo Kim is capitalizing on them. Joel Dahmen's more of a hit or miss type of guy, right? And at a golf course that's only 7,200 yards, this is one of the rare golf courses on tour that he actually has a chance. He's been very honest with himself in interviews, saying that at long, bomber golf courses, he doesn't really stand a chance. This isn't one of those venues. So I like his upside. The putter hasn't really been there of late, but like I said, everything is fixed once he gets on Poa Anua. So I like him there. Gains over a third of a stroke more per round in that category. The recent form, even though the ball striking has been there, has not been consistent. So you can see why he's priced where he is. It's been a bunch of missed cuts, a few made cuts back in the past, right? But 63rd at the Charles Schwab, 32nd at the Memorial. He's getting the job done. Only one missed cut on his record, but nothing flashy, right? So no one's going to want to run to the window to play Joel Dahmen, but we know that he's got that volatility in him, and at the very least has been striking the ball solidly of late. So if he can go out there, continue to do that, maybe make a few extra putts this week, shoot someone like 3-4 under par one of these rounds, maybe gets himself into the mix come Sunday. Alrighty guys, that's all I've got for this week's values. Before you hop on out of here, let me know who your favorite play priced $8,000 and below is on Draftkings. I considered taking Terrell Hamm this week, but after the missed cut, couldn't go ahead and tout him, but maybe it's Terrell for you guys. Whoever it is in the field, go ahead and let me know in the comments. As per usual, going to have even more content dropping throughout the week. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you go ahead and do so. That content is going to include fades and sleepers dropping sometime tomorrow morning. Our weekly DFS live stream, Wednesday at 7 p.m. There you can ask me any questions that you have. Anyone you want to deep dive on, you can go ahead and throw them down in the chat. We'll be touching on weather, strategy, all that sort of fun stuff. So you're not going to want to miss out on that stuff. Make sure you are a subscriber and you get the notifications when that drops. I appreciate all the support, guys. Best of luck with all of your lineups for this week. And hopefully it can be just as entertaining as the RBC Canadian Open, because that was an absolute banger of an event. And now that we have a major championship, I'm expecting an encore.